The first international civilian flight to leave Afghanistan since the U.S.-led withdrawal has now landed in Doha. More than 100 passengers were on board the flight, including U.S. and German citizens. The flight to Doha comes as the Taliban consolidate their grip on power less than a month after they seized control of Kabul. Another flight bound for Qatar is expected to depart on Friday. But many thousands of Afghans remain desperate to leave the country, fearing for their future under Taliban rule. All right, we want to bring in Franz Marty now. He's a journalist based in Kabul, one of the few Western observers still left in the country. Good evening to you, Franz. Can you tell us what was among those people who were able to leave Kabul today? What did they have that allowed them to get on that plane and leave the country?
It's not 100% verified, but apparently it was all like passport holders from foreign countries, mainly US citizens, some Canadian and British citizens, I was told. Among them possibly many Afghans who got naturalized citizenship. And this was a special flight, so this was a charter flight. And this was based on an apparent agreement between these nations and the Taliban to repatriate them.
So we're talking about foreigners who had the correct papers. They were allowed to leave. What about Afghan citizens who want to leave?
The Taliban have said that they will allow, and they have said this several times, that they will allow Afghans who have all the right travel papers to come and go as they please. At the moment, this is a rather hypothetical question because, like today, this was a first flight, but this was under a special agreement. So this wasn't like a regular flight. When regular international flights, commercial flights will again start is at the time still not clear. It might take several more days, and then there will be the test how easy Afghans with the right papers can leave. For example, the land border crossings are currently only partly open, and neighboring countries don't let Afghans in except when they have a visa, but it doesn't seem to happen like often. So this test is just yet to come.
In front, we focus a lot on the people who are trying to leave, who are leaving the country, but the Taliban, it has 40 million Afghans now that it has to govern, and it is facing lots of crises, isn't it? Humanitarian crises.
Indeed, there's a huge problem, and many Afghans that I talk to also say that their biggest worry is the unemployment. Unemployment was already before a huge problem, but now it has increased even more. Funds of the former government have been frozen, and the Taliban have to now deal with swiftly deteriorating economic situation, and at the time being, there's no sign what or how they will do anything against it. So this will be one of the biggest tests and one of the biggest things to look out, how the economic situation of Afghanistan will go forward.
Okay, journalist Franz Marty with the latest tonight from Kabul. Franz, as always, thank you. Well, there is mounting concern about the fate of women under the Taliban. Those who've staged rallies demanding the right to work and to go to school have been met with violence. Many fear a return to repressive rule.
It takes courage to protest openly against the Taliban, especially for women. Yet these female protesters in Mazar-e-Sharif refuse to be silenced. We demand the creation of secure jobs, both for men and women, and the right to participate in politics for women, the right for women to be selected and elected for leadership positions, and the right to private ownership, the right for women to work in the judicial and legal sector, and the right to freedom of speech. But the Taliban's strict gender rules have already started to affect everyday life. Female students returning to university on the first day of lectures after the summer break found they'd been separated from their male classmates. Before, we all studied together. We were comrades. And now this curtain. It's horrible, but we have no choice. It's absurd. Everything has stopped for us. Many people have left. I feel lonely and desperate. When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan 20 years ago, women's rights were severely curtailed. Women were not allowed to work, they were banned from education, and only allowed in public fully covered and accompanied by a male chaperone. This time around, the hardline Islamists have been keen to portray themselves as more moderate. In their first press conference after taking power, their spokesman promised women's rights would be honoured within the norms of Islamic law, though he failed to elaborate on what exactly this would mean. Many women in Afghanistan expect to return to the dark days of the Taliban's first reign. We spoke to a student at the American University of Afghanistan in Kabul.
You know, like when someone is dreaming for a better life and working for 21 years to just reach the dream, and suddenly in one night everything just damaged. Just imagine. And now I myself feel like I am in a room where only there is a darkness, no hope for a better future or no hope for a light. This is the feeling that I really have.
That feeling of hopelessness is far from unwarranted. 2 weeks ago, the Taliban told working women to stay at home for security reasons, a measure they said was temporary. But many fear this is just one of many steps towards a society in which women will ultimately be deprived of their fundamental rights and freedoms, and all but erased from public life.
Well, a senior Taliban official has said that women will be forbidden from playing cricket or possibly any other sport because their participation, and I'm quoting here, is not necessary. Now, since the Taliban assumed power in Afghanistan, the country's women's football team has been disbanded, with a large number of former players evacuated to Australia. On Wednesday, a Taliban spokesman said female participation in any events that expose their bodies will be forbidden. Cricket Australia has responded, saying a men's cricket match between Afghanistan and Australia, which is scheduled for November, will be canceled if the Taliban go through with the ban.
It's not a surprise because we knew it when Taliban took over the country. That is like what the first instant action for us, for me especially, was to get our players as many as possible get out of the country, because we knew them, we know them. They have been always like this and they will never change. Of course, they are changed in terms of like how they communicate with media, but with their action and what they are doing, and especially the announcement that they are made, they have never been changed, and they don't see women in participating in any activities in society. They just want to vanish women. They don't see women as part of the population.